I want you to hear me right now. Your mind is under attack, and the enemy doesn't want you to see the victory that's already inside of you. Every negative thought, every fear, every doubt, it's not the end of your story. Today, I'm going to show you how to build a mind that cannot be defeated, a mind anchored in purpose, faith, and unshakable confidence. This is not just motivation. It's transformation. I need you to understand something. Your mind is your most powerful weapon. If you let it be dominated by worry, by what people say, or by past failures, you will remain stuck. But when you learn to discipline your thoughts, to take every lie captive, and to renew your mind daily, you become unstoppable. This is the same principle that has carried me through the storms of life, and I know it will carry you too. You might be thinking, I've tried to be strong, I've prayed, I've read, I've done all the right things, and yet here you are still struggling. I'm here to tell you that's not the measure of your failure. It's the opportunity for your breakthrough. The mind that refuses to be defeated is not born overnight. It's cultivated with persistence, prayer, and the courage to rise every time you fall. So today, I challenge you. Take control of your thoughts. Speak life over your circumstances. Refuse to let fear dictate your future. Fill your mind with hope, with truth, and with the promises of God. When you do this, every obstacle becomes a stepping stone, and every trial becomes testimony. This is how you build a mind that cannot be defeated. If this message is stirring something in your spirit, like this video and subscribe to the channel for daily motivation. I want you to write any famous quote that inspires you in the comments, and also comment one thing you're believing God for today. Remember what Winston Churchill said, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Keep that courage alive in your mind every single day. Your mind is the battlefield before anything else happens in your life. Before your relationships, your career, your health, or your destiny even comes into view, it all begins in your mind. I want you to understand this deeply today. What you allow yourself to think, what you dwell on, what you meditate on day after day, it all becomes the soil from which your life grows. Your mind is your greatest weapon. It is your most powerful tool. And yet so many of us have been living as if it's a tool we do not even own. We let worry control it. We let fear control it. We let past pain and regret sit on the throne of our thoughts and dictate the life we are supposed to walk in. But today that ends when you start to grasp the power of your mind. You will see that nothing in your external world is more influential than the thoughts you entertain inside. Every victory you've ever achieved, every breakthrough you've ever experienced, every moment where you felt unstoppable, it all began with a thought, a single idea that refused to die. A single vision that your spirit clung to even when your circumstances screamed otherwise. You see, your mind is the origin of all creation in your life. God himself used his mind to create the heavens and the earth, to bring light into the darkness and to speak life into the void. And in the same way, the mind he has given you can create realities, shape your decisions, and determine your destiny if you learn how to steward it properly. But here's the truth that many people fail to realize. A mind that is left uncontrolled, a mind that is left unchecked can be your greatest enemy. Thoughts that are unfiltered, negative, self-critical, or filled with fear can become the chains that keep you from stepping into your purpose. You might have the greatest calling, the greatest potential, and the most divine opportunity waiting on your doorstep. But if your mind is convinced that you're not enough, it will never allow you to take the first step forward. That's why it's so critical to recognize that your mind is not just a passive instrument of life. It is the battlefield where your faith is tested, where your identity is confirmed, and where the seeds of your destiny are planted. When I talk about your mind being a weapon, I don't mean in a loud, aggressive, or combative way. I mean it in a sacred, powerful, intentional way. It is the instrument through which you can choose victory over defeat. The weapon doesn't fire on its own. You must aim it, load it with truth, and pull the trigger with consistency. And the ammunition is every thought you allow to take root in your mind. The question I want you to ask yourself today is, what are you feeding your mind? What are you speaking over yourself? Are you feeding it the lies of your past, the fears of what might happen tomorrow, the doubts of what you see in the world? Or are you feeding it the truth of who God says you are, the promises he has given you, and the vision he has placed inside of your heart? I want you to take a moment and think about how often we underestimate the mind's influence over our life, how often we dismiss it thinking, oh, it's just a thought, or I can't control everything I think about, but you can. You may not always control what pops into your mind first, but you absolutely have the power to decide what you allow to stay there. You have the power to guard your thoughts, to take every negative or limiting thought captive. and to replace it with life-giving, hope-fueled, faith-driven truth. That is how you transform your mind into a weapon, how you harness the power God has placed inside of you. Let me be very clear. What you think does not only influence your attitude, it influences your actions, your relationships, your decisions, and ultimately your results. If you believe you are defeated before you even start, you will act in ways that confirm that belief. If you believe that God has prepared your way, that He has equipped you, that He has called you for a purpose bigger than your past, you will act in alignment with that truth, and you will see doors open that once seemed locked. Every thought carries energy. Every belief carries power, and every mindset carries results. Your mind is not neutral. It is always creating. And the question you have to ask yourself is, am I allowing my mind to create life, or am I allowing it to create limitation? Now, I know life can be hard. I know circumstances can feel overwhelming. I know it's easy to wake up some mornings and find your mind flooded with doubt, with fear, with anxiety about what you can't control. But I want you to hear me clearly. Your mind does not have to obey the chaos outside. Your mind is not dictated by the storms around you. Your mind is a sacred space, a place where you can take control, where you can declare victory even before it manifests, where you can refuse to let fear and negativity take root. It is where you learn to speak life over your circumstances, where you learn to reinforce your identity as a child of God, and where you prepare yourself to handle the challenges that come your way with wisdom, resilience, and faith. Think about it like this. Your mind is a garden. Whatever you plant, you will eventually harvest. If you plant seeds of doubt, fear, and negativity, you will harvest anxiety, regret, and limitation. But if you plant seeds of faith, hope, and purpose, you will harvest courage, breakthrough, and victory. And the amazing thing is, you don't have to wait for someone else to water your garden. You don't have to wait for a circumstance to change. It is within your power right now to plant and cultivate the thoughts that will shape the life you were created to live. So how do we begin to wield this weapon? How do we take our minds, this powerful tool, and make it work for us instead of against us? It starts with awareness. You must first recognize the state of your mind. What are the recurring thoughts that dominate your day? What are the messages you repeat to yourself without even realizing it? Awareness is the first step, because until you know what is in your mind, you cannot take intentional steps to redirect it. Once you are aware, the next step is choice. You have to choose to refuse the negative thoughts, to reject the lies, and to replace them with truth. Every time a fear tries to take hold, every time doubt whispers in, you must intentionally replace it with truth. Speak over yourself. I am enough. I am capable. I am loved. I am equipped. I am prepared. I am walking in the plan God has for me. These words are more than just affirmations. They are the ammunition that strengthens your mind, the spiritual fuel that empowers your thoughts, and the declaration that your mind will no longer be a place of defeat, but a place of victory. Discipline is also key. A mind that cannot be defeated is cultivated over time through consistent effort. It is trained, nurtured, and reinforced day by day. This is why spiritual disciplines, prayer, meditation, reading the word, journaling, surrounding yourself with positive influences are so critical. They are the training ground where your mind learns what it can and cannot accept. They are the tools that sharpen your mental focus and protect you from the influences that would weaken your resolve. And finally, I want to emphasize the power of perspective. The mind that cannot be defeated sees beyond the immediate, does not allow circumstances, setbacks, or the opinions of others to define reality. It understands that life is a series of moments, that challenges are temporary, and that God's plan is bigger than any obstacle. When your mind operates from perspective, it becomes unshakable. It doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It doesn't mean you won't feel pain. It doesn't mean the storms won't come, but it means your mind knows the truth. It trusts the process, and it refuses to be conquered by temporary circumstances. You must realize that your mind has already won in ways you cannot even see yet. Every time you choose faith over fear, every time you choose hope over despair, every time you choose to focus on the truth instead of the lies, you are strengthening a weapon inside of you that the world cannot take away. And the beautiful part is this: your mind is limitless. There is no situation too big, no past too painful, no enemy too strong, and no dream too impossible that a renewed mind cannot overcome. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Let it sink in. Your mind is your greatest weapon. Your thoughts shape your life. And today, you have the power to begin cultivating it, to begin protecting it, and to begin using it intentionally to create the life you have been called to live. Every single day, you can make a choice to guard your mind, to strengthen it, and to feed it with truth. That is how you become undefeatable. That is how you rise above the challenges. That is how you take control of your life from the inside out. Your mind is where victory begins. It is where your identity is confirmed. It is where your future is decided. When you understand this, when you truly internalize it, you will never be the same. The battles you face in life will not define you because you have the weapon inside of you to stand firm, to rise above, and to walk in the purpose God has placed for you. Your thoughts are more powerful than most people realize. They are not just random images or fleeting ideas. They're the architects of your life. Every emotion, every decision, every reaction you have is influenced by the thoughts that occupy your mind. And yet so many of us live as if our minds are free for all a space where anything can take root without question. I want you to understand something today. You do not have to accept every thought that comes into your mind. You do not have to entertain fear, doubt, anxiety, or discouragement. You have been given authority over your thoughts. You have been given the power to decide what stays and what goes. This is a spiritual principle that changes everything. You must take every negative thought captive and replace it with God's truth. It starts with awareness. You have to be willing to pay attention to what is happening in your mind. So often we let thoughts pass through like clouds in the sky without noticing them, without evaluating them, without questioning their source or their validity. But if you want to live an undefeatable life, if you want to experience the peace, the purpose, and the victory God has called you to, you must first notice what is occupying your mental space. Ask yourself, what are the recurring messages I tell myself? What are the beliefs I've been repeating for years that may be rooted in fear, shame, or past disappointment? Awareness is the first step because you cannot take control of what you do not recognize. Once you become aware, the next step is action. You must take intentional steps to capture those thoughts that are harmful, that are not rooted in truth, and that do not serve the life you are called to live. This is not passive. This is not something that happens automatically. You have to be intentional. You have to say, no, I refuse to allow this thought to control me. I refuse to let it dictate my mood, my choices, or my identity. This is spiritual discipline. This is the kind of work that strengthens your mind and fortifies your soul. Every time you refuse to accept a negative thought, you are building resilience. Every time you choose truth over lie, you are training your mind to operate differently. The key to this process is replacing the thought, not just rejecting it. It's not enough to say, that's a negative thought, I won't believe it. You must actively replace it with truth. And where does truth come from? Truth comes from God. Truth comes from the Word. Truth comes from remembering who you are in Christ, remembering the promises He has made, and refusing to accept the counterfeit stories the enemy tries to feed you. If a thought says, you are not enough, you replace it with, I am fearfully and wonderfully, I am chosen, I am equipped, I am loved beyond measure. If a thought says, you will never get through this, you replace it with, God is my refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. I will not be shaken because His power is working through me. The replacement of negative thoughts with truth is what transforms your mind from a battlefield into a sanctuary. I want you to imagine your mind as a room. Every thought is a guest that comes in. Some guests bring peace, encouragement, and inspiration. Others bring chaos, fear, and confusion. You have the right, the power, and the responsibility to decide who stays and who leaves. This is not about controlling the first thought that comes to your mind, because you cannot always do that. But it is about controlling what you nurture, what you allow to take root, and what you choose to dwell on. When you start exercising this authority over your thoughts, you will notice a profound difference in your life. Your emotions stabilize, your decisions align more with purpose. Your actions begin to reflect confidence rather than hesitation. Every thought that challenges your identity or purpose is an opportunity for transformation. Do not treat negative thoughts as something to ignore. Treat them as something to confront. Treat them as something to analyze. Where did this thought come from? Is it rooted in reality? Or is it a lie? What would God say about this thought? This practice may feel small at first, but it is the training ground for an undefeatable mind. Just like a muscle grows stronger with repetition, your mind becomes stronger, more resilient, and more aligned with truth each time you take a negative thought captive and replace it with God's word. You might wonder, how do I maintain this consistently? Life is busy. Distractions are many, and our minds are constantly bombarded with information, expectations, and pressures. The answer is discipline and routine. Begin each day with intentional thoughts. Begin each day with scripture, with prayer, with reminders of your identity and purpose. Fill your mind with music, messages, and influences that lift you up rather than tear you down. in each day by reflecting on the moments where you allowed God's truth to override fear. This is how the mind becomes a safe, powerful space. This is how you reclaim control over the narrative of your life. Another key to this process is understanding that thoughts are not just private. They influence your life in visible ways. Your health, your relationships, your work, your ability to persevere, all are influenced by the mental patterns you establish. Negative thoughts left unchecked manifest in stress, conflict, hesitation, and missed opportunities. Truth-filled thoughts manifest in peace, clarity, courage, and breakthrough. You cannot separate what you think from how you live. They are inseparable. The way you take thoughts captive will directly shape the quality of your life, the depth of your joy, the power of your purpose. And let us not forget grace. You will not always succeed in capturing every thought immediately. Your mind has been trained over years, sometimes decades, to respond to fear, doubt, and insecurity. Do not be discouraged when old thoughts arise. When a negative thought comes, acknowledge it, take it captive, and replace it with truth. Over time, the frequency of these thoughts will diminish, and the speed at which you replace them will increase. This is progress. This is growth. This is spiritual maturity in action. I want you to picture your mind as a garden once again. Negative thoughts are weeds. If left unchecked, they grow and choke out the flowers of faith, hope, and purpose. But every time you consciously remove a weed and plant a seed of truth in its place, your mind begins to flourish. Eventually, you will have a landscape of thoughts that support you, empower you, and align with the life God has designed for you. The beauty of this garden is that it produces not only peace internally, but also power externally. A cultivated mind transforms your words, your actions, and the impact you have on others. Remember, this process is not instantaneous, and it is not always easy, but it is necessary. Your mind is your battlefield, your sanctuary, and your instrument of influence. The choice of what you allow to dwell there will determine the trajectory of your life. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You will start noticing almost automatically when a thought arises that is not aligned with truth, and you will be able to replace it without hesitation. That is freedom. That is victory. That is a mind that cannot be defeated. Every moment presents an opportunity to take a thought captive. Every conversation, every interaction, every circumstance, every quiet moment of reflection is an opportunity to evaluate the thoughts in your mind and align them with truth. When you do this consistently, you are not only protecting yourself from the lies and fears that would limit your life, you are also opening the door to God's promises, to breakthrough, to alignment with destiny, and to the fullness of joy and peace that comes from living in accordance with His word. You must recognize that your mind is sacred, that it is powerful, and that it is worth protecting. It is the space where your identity is confirmed, where your faith is nurtured, and where your destiny is planned. You cannot afford to let negative thoughts dictate the direction of your life. You must act intentionally. You must act with purpose. You must take every thought captive and replace it with truth. It is not optional if you desire to live a life that is victorious, peaceful, and aligned with God's design. And so I challenge you to begin now. Begin noticing the thoughts you entertain. Begin evaluating them. Begin rejecting the ones that are not true and replacing them with the ones that are. Do this consistently with grace, with patience, and with faith. Your mind is your weapon, your greatest resource, and your strongest ally when properly trained. When you take negative thoughts captive and replace them with God's truth, you begin to operate from a place of freedom, power, and authority. Your mind becomes unshakable. Your spirit becomes strong. Your life begins to reflect the victory that has always been promised to you. Your mind is a garden. And like any garden, it requires constant tending. You cannot plant seeds of faith, hope, and purpose, water them once, and expect a full harvest to appear overnight. The mind, much like the soul, grows through persistence. It is through daily, intentional effort that the mind is renewed, strengthened, and transformed. The way you think determines the trajectory of your life. And so every day, every moment is an opportunity to cultivate a mindset that cannot be defeated. It is not enough to hope for change. It must be pursued, nurtured, and exercised consistently. Persistence is the secret to victory. I want you to understand that the mind does not shift because of luck, because of a sudden burst of motivation, or because the circumstances finally line up. Your mind shifts because you choose day after day to feed it truth, to reject the lies, and to reinforce the promises that God has spoken over your life. Every thought you entertain, Every word you speak over yourself and every habit you cultivate shapes the way you see yourself and the world around you. The mind that is not renewed becomes stagnant, fearful, and reactive. But the mind that is persistently renewed becomes powerful, resilient, and proactive. Renewing your mind is an act of spiritual discipline. It is a commitment to refuse old patterns, to refuse defeat, and to refuse the enemy the right to dictate your destiny. You do this by filling your mind with scripture, with affirmations of who God says you are, with visions of the future you are stepping into, and with reminders of the victories you have already experienced. The power of persistence lies not in doing it perfectly, but in doing it consistently. Some days will feel easier than others, and some moments will test you beyond what you think you can handle. That is precisely why persistence matters. The mind that is renewed persistently does not allow setbacks to define it. Life will bring disappointments, trials, and moments of fear and uncertainty. But when you have trained your mind to renew itself daily, to cling to truth, and to reject the negative lies, you create a foundation that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Every obstacle becomes a challenge that can be met with faith rather than fear. Every difficulty becomes a test that produces endurance, wisdom, and strength. This is how an undefeatable mindset is cultivated, not in the absence of trials, but in the daily choice to respond to them from a place of renewal and alignment with God's truth. Persistence in renewing your mind is also a practice of self-awareness. You must know what thoughts, beliefs, and patterns are holding you back. You must be willing to confront them, to evaluate them, and to replace them with thoughts that empower, encourage, and align with the destiny God has called you to. This requires courage, humility, and honesty. It requires the willingness to be uncomfortable, to face truths you may have ignored, and to take steps toward growth, even when the results are not immediately visible. But it is in this process, repeated consistently, that your mind becomes unbreakable. Every morning offers a new opportunity to renew your mind. Before the distractions, before the noise, before the pressures of the day take hold, you have a chance to set the tone for your thoughts. You can begin your day by reminding yourself of your identity, your purpose, and the promises that God has spoken over your life. You can choose what will dominate your mental space. You can choose hope over despair, faith over fear, and life over limitation. This daily act of persistence is what creates momentum. It is what gradually shifts your mental patterns, reinforces your resilience, and strengthens your ability to face life with clarity and confidence. Renewing your mind persistently also requires patience. Change is rarely immediate. Old thought patterns, deeply ingrained beliefs, and conditioned responses do not disappear overnight. They require gentle, consistent work to replace. And yet, each day that you make the choice to feed your mind with truth, each day that you refuse to give power to fear and negativity, each day that you remind yourself of your worth and purpose, you are building a mental foundation that is increasingly strong, capable, and undefeatable. The mind that is patient in its renewal eventually becomes unshakable because it has learned how to persist through struggle and remain aligned with truth. This persistence also involves repetition and reinforcement. What you focus on consistently shapes the wiring of your mind. When you repeatedly meditate on God's promises, when you repeatedly speak life over yourself, when you repeatedly choose faith over fear, you are training your mind respond automatically to challenges with strength, clarity, and wisdom. Over time, this becomes second nature. Your mind begins to operate from a place of truth and alignment with God's purpose, rather than reaction to circumstance. This is the hallmark of an undefeatable mindset. It is not easily swayed, shaken, or discouraged. I want you to understand that persistence, renewing your mind, is not just about avoiding negativity. It is about actively cultivating positivity, clarity, and spiritual alignment. It is about deliberately creating mental spaces that support your growth, your relationships, your decisions, and your purpose. It is about recognizing that every thought, every word, and every mental image you allow can either build or break your future. The mind that is renewed persistently chooses to build, to strengthen, and to align with life-giving truth. The process of renewing your mind requires intentionality. It requires planning and structure. You cannot leave it to chance, hoping that your mind will naturally align with truth. You must be proactive. You must schedule time for reflection, for meditation, for prayer, for reading, and for surrounding yourself with messages that reinforce truth. This intentionality becomes a habit, and habit becomes character, and character becomes destiny. Each moment of persistence contributes to the gradual transformation of your mind into a powerful, undefeatable force. Persistence is also about resilience. When negative thoughts arise, when fear whispers in your ear, when doubt tries to creep in, The mind that has been persistently renewed does not give in. It responds with truth, faith, and courage. It has practiced this response so many times that it becomes instinctive. You develop the ability to navigate life's storms without being overwhelmed. You develop the capacity to remain calm, confident, and focused even in the midst of chaos. This is the power of persistence. It trains the mind to respond with strength rather than react in weakness. Daily renewal is a choice that must be made consciously. Every morning you can choose to fill your mind with hope, with truth, and with purpose, or you can allow fear, doubt, and distraction to dominate. Every evening you can choose to reflect on the progress you've made, to reinforce the lessons learned, and to prepare your mind for the next day. This cycle of awareness, choice, and reflection is what gradually transforms ordinary thoughts into extraordinary mental strength. It is the practice of persistence in action, and it is the foundation of an undefeatable mindset. Renewing your mind persistently also strengthens your spiritual awareness. You begin to recognize the difference between thoughts that are rooted in fear, negativity, or deception, and thoughts that are aligned with God's truth and purpose. You develop discernment, the ability to identify which mental messages to accept, which to reject, and which to transform. This discernment empowers you to take control of your internal world, to protect your mental space, and to live intentionally rather than reactively. Persistence in mind renewal is not a solitary effort. Surround yourself with voices, influences, and environments that reinforce truth. Community, mentorship, spiritual guidance, and supportive relationships are essential in training your mind to stay focused, aligned, and resilient. Positive reinforcement from your environment accelerates growth, encourages consistency, and strengthens your resolve. While your mind ultimately takes responsibility for its renewal, the influences you allow into your life play a critical role in shaping your persistence and effectiveness. The practice of renewing your mind persistently also requires self-compassion. There will be moments when negative thoughts resurface, when old patterns try to reclaim space, and when doubt threatens to creep in. In those moments, patience and grace are essential. Do not condemn yourself for the thoughts that arise. Instead, use them as opportunities to practice persistence, to exercise control, and to reinforce the truth. Each time you do this, your mental resilience grows stronger, your confidence increases, and your ability to maintain an undefeatable mindset deepens. Finally, understand that persistence in renewing your mind is not just about surviving life. It is about thriving in it. It is about creating a mental foundation so strong, so aligned, and so empowered that no circumstance, no opinion, no setback, and no obstacle can derail you. The mind that is renewed daily becomes a sanctuary of peace, a source of strength, and a springboard for purpose. It becomes a place where clarity reigns, faith prevails, and victory becomes inevitable. I want you to hear me clearly today. Fear and doubt are temporary, but faith and purpose are permanent. There is nothing in this world powerful enough to take away what God has placed in you, and yet so many of us live as though fear and doubt have authority over our lives. We let them linger, we let them speak, and we let them guide our decisions. But I want you to understand something today. Fear is not your final word. Doubt is not your destiny, and anxiety is not your authority. What is permanent in your life is faith and the purpose God has written into your very being. These are unshakable, unwavering, and unstoppable. Fear shows up in different forms. Sometimes it whispers quietly in your mind that you are not enough. Sometimes it shouts loudly through circumstances that seem impossible to overcome. Sometimes it paralyzes you, keeping you from taking the very steps God has called you to take. Doubt is similar. It undermines your confidence. It questions your worth, and it challenges your ability to succeed. But I want you to hear me. These are temporary conditions. They are not the essence of who you are. They are not permanent states, and they cannot hold you when you anchor yourself in the truth of God's promises. Faith, on the other hand, is enduring. Faith is not dependent on circumstances. Faith is not swayed by setbacks, failures, or the opinions of others. Faith is the quiet, steady assurance that God is working behind the scenes, even when you cannot see it. Faith is the anchor that holds you steady in the storm. Faith is what allows you to keep moving forward, even when the path is unclear, even when the results are not immediate, and even when doubt tries to whisper in your ear. Faith is permanent because it is rooted in the eternal, in the one who never changes, and in the purpose that he has written for your life. Purpose is also permanent. No matter how many times you feel defeated, no matter how many obstacles arise, your purpose remains intact. God has designed you for something specific, something significant, and something impactful. Your fear does not erase your purpose. Your doubt does not nullify your calling. And your mistakes do not cancel your destiny. Purpose is like a lighthouse. It stands firm. It guides you through the darkness, and it leads you to the fulfillment of the life God has planned for you. When you align your mind and your heart with your purpose, fear and doubt lose their power because you are living in truth, and truth is stronger than any lie that tries to stop you. I want you to consider this temporary feelings are just that, temporary. Fear, doubt, worry, anxiety. They come and go. They may be loud and intimidating at first, but they are not permanent. They are the storms that pass, the clouds that drift away, and the moments that test your strength. Faith and purpose, however, are the mountains that do not move, the foundation that cannot be shaken, and the fire within that keeps burning even when everything around you seems uncertain. The choice is yours. Will you focus on the temporary, or will you anchor yourself in the permanent? Will you allow fear to dictate your actions, or will you allow faith to guide you? Every time fear tries to take hold, I want you to remember that it is temporary. Every time doubt creeps into your thoughts, I want you to remind yourself that it does not have the final say. Every time you feel small, inadequate, or overwhelmed, you have the choice to refocus on what is permanent, the faith that sustains you, and the purpose that propels you forward. You are not bound by your emotions. You are not limited by your circumstances. And you are not defeated by what you feel in this moment. You are equipped to rise, to endure, and to overcome, because faith and purpose are greater than any fear or doubt you encounter. Faith and purpose require attention. They are not passive. They must be nurtured, cultivated, and strengthened daily. This is why spiritual disciplines are so critical. Prayer, meditation, reading God's word, surrounding yourself with people who encourage your faith, and taking intentional steps toward your purpose. All of these practices strengthen the permanence within you. The more you focus on faith and purpose, the less power fear and doubt have. The more you cultivate alignment with God's calling, the more resilient you become in the face of challenges. This is how you transform temporary feelings into opportunities for growth, breakthroughs, and testimony. Fear often masquerades as wisdom. It whispers, be careful, don't risk too much, stay where it's safe. Doubt often disguises itself as realism. It says, you can't do it. You don't have what it takes. This is too much for you. But I want you to recognize that these are lies. Fear and doubt are temporary distractions designed to keep you from stepping into what God has called you to do. Faith and purpose, however, are the truth. They are the foundation on which your life can be built, the compass that guides you, and the fuel that empowers you to keep moving even when the way is hard. The permanence of faith and purpose also gives you perspective. It allows you to see beyond the temporary struggles of today and tomorrow. It allows you to recognize that life is a series of moments, challenges, and victories, but your identity and calling remain intact when fear tries to tell you that you cannot overcome. When doubt tries to convince you that you will fail, faith and purpose remind you that you are designed for victory. They remind you that God is with you, that his plan is unfolding, and that the obstacles you face are only temporary tests, not permanent barriers. I want you to understand that persistence in faith is what strengthens your mind against fear and doubt. When you choose faith consistently, you build a resilience that fear cannot penetrate. When you choose to focus on your purpose daily, you create clarity that doubt cannot obscure. It is not enough to have faith occasionally. It must become a rhythm, a habit, a lifestyle. Purpose must not be something you remember only when it is convenient. It must be the lens through which you view every challenge, every decision, and every opportunity. This persistent alignment with what is permanent protects your mind, nourishes your spirit, and empowers your life. Fear and doubt often thrive in isolation. They grow when you are alone with your thoughts, when you are disconnected from God, and when you allow negativity to dominate your mental space. Faith and purpose thrive in connection with God, with your calling, and with people who remind you of your value and potential. Surround yourself with reminders of truth, with environments that support growth, and with influences that reinforce your faith. This is how you maintain perspective, resist temporary fear, and remain anchored in the permanent reality of God's plan for your life. Every time you face a decision, an obstacle, or a challenge, ask yourself, am I operating from fear and doubt? Or am I operating from faith and purpose? This question changes everything. It forces you to pause, to evaluate your mindset, and to realign with what is permanent. It is in these moments of conscious choice that the mind is strengthened, the spirit is fortified, and the life you were called to live begins to unfold with clarity and power. Faith and purpose are not theoretical concepts. They are practical forces that shape your life. Faith influences your actions, your decisions, and your ability to persevere. Purpose directs your energy, your focus, and your priorities. Together, they provide a framework for living that cannot be shaken by temporary emotions, fleeting doubts, or external pressures. The more you internalize this truth, the more unshakable your confidence becomes, and the more unstoppable your life trajectory will be. I want you to picture fear and doubt as clouds in the sky. They may appear large, dark, and intimidating, but they are temporary. They pass, they dissipate, and they do not define the day. Faith and purpose are the sun, the unchanging presence that illuminates everything, warms everything, and guides the way. No matter how dark the clouds appear, the sun remains. So too, no matter how loud fear and doubt seem, faith and purpose remain steady, permanent and true. Understanding the permanence of faith and purpose transforms how you respond to life. You no longer react impulsively to fear. You no longer allow doubt to dictate your choices. You approach challenges with calm confidence, knowing that your destiny is secure, that your calling is intact, and that your God is faithful. This perspective allows you to move forward boldly, to take risks, and to step into opportunities that you might otherwise avoid if you were governed by temporary emotions. Life is full of trials. Some come softly, almost unnoticed, like a quiet challenge that tests your patience or your perspective. Others arrive suddenly, violently, shaking the very foundation of your world. And yet, the truth I want to share with you today is this: every trial you face is not just an obstacle, it is an opportunity. It is an opportunity to strengthen your mind, to deepen your spirit, and to build resilience that cannot be shaken. It may not feel like an opportunity in the moment, but the lessons hidden within challenges are what shape your character, fortify your faith, and prepare you for the life you were designed to live. Every trial presents a choice. You can respond with fear, with frustration, with despair, or you can respond with courage, with faith, and with intentionality. This choice is the foundation of mental and spiritual resilience. When difficulties arise, it is easy to allow them to define you, to allow them to determine your mood, your mindset, or even your destiny. But when you recognize that trials are temporary and that they carry within them lessons and opportunities for growth, you begin to approach life differently. You begin to see challenges not as threats, but as training grounds for your mind, your spirit, and your future. Trials test your perspective. They reveal what you truly believe about yourself, about life, and about God. When everything is going smoothly, it is easy to feel strong, confident, and secure. But when the storms come, that is when your mental and spiritual resilience is revealed. The way you process setbacks, disappointments, and hardships determines the strength of your character and the trajectory of your life. Every challenge is a mirror reflecting back what you need to address in your mind, your heart, and your faith. Those who learn to respond with intentionality, who look for the lesson rather than just the pain, begin to develop an unshakable resilience that carries them through not only this trial, but all that follow. I want you to understand that resilience is not something you are born with. It is something you cultivate. It is the result of consistent effort, reflection, and a willingness to engage with life honestly. Every trial provides a moment to practice resilience. When you face fear, you have the chance to choose courage. When you encounter doubt, you have the chance to choose faith. When you experience loss or disappointment, you have the opportunity to choose hope. Each of these moments strengthens your mind and your spirit, and over time, this intentional practice builds an inner fortitude that is unshakable. One of the most powerful aspects of trials is that they force us to evaluate our priorities, our values, and our beliefs. When life becomes difficult, we are confronted with the question: what really matters? What is permanent and what is temporary? What will I allow to control me? And what will I choose to rise above? These are not easy questions, and they require honesty and courage to answer. But the very act of engaging with these questions develops resilience. It strengthens your mental capacity to think clearly under pressure. And it strengthens your spiritual capacity to remain anchored in faith even when circumstances feel overwhelming. Trials also provide opportunities for growth that cannot be gained in comfort. Comfort allows us to coast, to stay stagnant, and to avoid the hard work of refining our minds and spirits. But challenge forces growth. It demands that we stretch, that we adapt, that we learn new ways of thinking and responding. Every time you face a difficult situation and choose to respond with faith rather than fear, with hope rather than despair, with persistence rather than giving up, you are building a mental and spiritual muscle that strengthens your ability to navigate life with confidence and clarity. This is the hidden blessing in every trial, the opportunity to emerge stronger than before. I want you to imagine resilience as a kind of inner armor. Each challenge you face adds a layer to this armor, but only if you actively engage with it, only if you allow it to teach you, and only if you choose to respond in alignment with your faith and purpose. Every trial that you confront with courage, every difficulty that you meet with persistence, And every setback that you process with reflection and intention strengthens this armor. Over time, you become someone who can face adversity without being broken, who can encounter setbacks without being discouraged, and who can navigate the complexities of life with grace, wisdom, and power. It is important to recognize that resilience does not mean the absence of pain or struggle. It does not mean that you will not feel fear, sadness, or frustration. Resilience means that you can feel these things and still choose to act in alignment with your values, your faith, and your purpose. It means that you can acknowledge the difficulty of your situation while refusing to allow it to define you. It means that you can hold on to hope even when the storm rages around you. And it is through this process, through feeling, responding, and choosing, that your mental and spiritual resilience is forged. Another key aspect of resilience is reflection. After every trial, take time to reflect on what you have learned. What did this situation reveal about your mindset, your faith, and your approach to life? What lessons can you carry forward? Reflection allows you to transform difficulty into wisdom, fear into faith, and setback into preparation for future victories. When you take the time to analyze your responses, your thought patterns, and your emotional reactions, you gain insight into yourself that cannot be obtained any other way. This insight is what strengthens your mental resilience, and it is what deepens your spiritual capacity to trust God in every circumstance. Trials also teach patience. The process of navigating difficulties reminds us that life unfolds over time, and that growth, healing, and transformation are rarely immediate. Patience is a core component of resilience, allows us to endure hardship without becoming discouraged, to persevere without losing hope, and to continue moving forward even when results are not yet visible. Each trial is a lesson in patience, each setback an opportunity to practice endurance, and each challenge a chance to strengthen your capacity to wait with faith, knowing that God is orchestrating your path. Faith plays a crucial role in resilience. When your mind is anchored in truth and your heart is aligned with purpose, trials become less overwhelming and more manageable. Faith allows you to trust that difficulties are not permanent, that setbacks are temporary, and that the challenges you face are shaping you for a greater future. Faith empowers you to look beyond the immediate discomfort and to focus on the long-term growth and transformation that each trial provides. It gives you the courage to persevere, the strength to endure, and the clarity to see opportunities where others see only obstacles. Every trial is also an opportunity to strengthen your character. Adversity exposes weaknesses, but it also cultivates virtues such as patience, humility, courage, perseverance, and wisdom. When you face life's challenges and respond with integrity, grace, and faith, you develop a character that can withstand future difficulties. Character and resilience are intertwined. They grow together, and each trial strengthens both, preparing you for greater responsibilities, deeper faith, and more meaningful opportunities. Resilience is a mindset, and a mindset is cultivated through consistent practice. Each trial is a chance to practice resilience, to reinforce your mental strength, and to deepen your spiritual fortitude. Over time, this repeated practice transforms the way you think, the way you respond, and the way you approach life. You begin to anticipate challenges with confidence rather than fear, to navigate setbacks with clarity rather than confusion, and to face uncertainty with hope rather than despair. This is the power of viewing trials as opportunities for growth rather than as threats to your well-being. I want you to recognize that even in moments of intense difficulty, you are not powerless. You have the capacity to choose your response. You have the ability to decide whether a trial will defeat you or refine you. You have the strength to take what seems overwhelming and transform it into a lesson, a testimony, and a foundation for growth. Every time you make the choice to rise above fear, to act in faith, and to remain aligned with your purpose, you are building resilience that will serve you for the rest of your life. Resilience also grows through connection. You are not meant to face trials alone. Supportive relationships, mentorship, spiritual guidance, and community provide reinforcement, encouragement, and perspective. Sharing your challenges and reflecting with others who understand, who encourage, and who remind you of your faith and purpose strengthens your ability to endure. Community amplifies the lessons of trials, helping you to see beyond the immediate pain and recognize the opportunities for growth and transformation that exist within each challenge. Every trial shapes your perspective. It teaches you to value what is important, to prioritize what matters, and to let go of what does not serve your growth. It challenges your assumptions, stretches your abilities, and demands that you adapt in ways that foster both mental and spiritual strength. The more trials you face intentionally and the more you engage with them constructively, the more equipped you become to navigate life with clarity, confidence, and peace. This is how resilience becomes a defining feature of your character and your life. Persistence in facing trials is essential. It is not enough to endure one difficulty and then retreat when the next challenge arises. True resilience is developed through sustained engagement with adversity, through repeated practice of faith, reflection, and perseverance. Each trial, no matter how small or large, contributes to a cumulative growth in mental and spiritual strength. Over time, you will find that challenges that once seemed insurmountable now become manageable, opportunities for learning and steps toward your purpose.